You're listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.
This episode...
It's the birds and the bees, sort of, in FAB Facts.
It's the 100th episode of the Randomiser.
And we hit another purple patch with producer Chris Bowden.
That's all coming up in Pod 101
of the Gerry Anderson podcast.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's get started. Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
The Gerry Anderson podcast with Jamie Anderson and Richard James.
Well, here we are into our second century, Jamie.
Yeah? Pod 101, 101, the 101st.
Yeah.
What are we going to call it?
Well, we call it the 101st. It's not that complicated.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Anyway, who are you?
I'm Jamie 101 Anderson, and you are...
Richard Einstein James. And
oh, interesting.
Yeah, you're listening to the Gerry Anderson podcast. We're here for the next hour and a bit, not quite as long as last week.
It better not be. Our poor listeners need a break, don't you, Podsterons? Goodness me, that was a 3-hour marathon for our century. If you've missed it, then, well, carve yourself out some time. Maybe take some holiday if you're not on furlough or whatever currently with the COVID situation, and sit down and enjoy it in one sitting or in multiple sittings, as many of our Podsterons did. I think somebody listened to half an hour a day for 6 days.
Oh, I mean, if anything, this was the perfect time, really, to produce a 3-hour podcast, wasn't it? You know?
Yeah. So, but we promise we won't do it again.
No, exactly. But we do have all the usual stuff this week. We've got Chris Dale's Randomiser, of course, coming up a little later on, whereby he sits down in front of a random Gerry Anderson episode and gives us his thoughts and comments.
And it's the 100th.
Ah.
See, because Chris started one episode after we started the podcast, so it's the 100th Randomiser. That's another reason to celebrate. Possibly even more important than 100th podcast, I'd say.
I should cocoa. We've also got some Gerry Anderson news, of course. And we've got facts coming up shortly. And Jamie, the first part of an interview this week with...
I have. It's with Chris Bowden.
Yeah.
Chris is a producer, currently works for Mackinnon and Saunders, who, famous puppet makers. And we're interviewed way back on Pod 13, 14,
early days,
somewhere around there,
certainly, yes.
Maybe a bit later, I can't remember. And Chris was the producer on Lavender Castle, Dad's stop-motion series from the late 90s, and was a friend of Dad's. And, it's just a fascinating two-parter, all about Chris's career, meeting and working with Dad, and working on Lavender Castle, all that sort of stuff.
Great.
It's great. Something to look forward to.
Nice. I should say a quick thank you to all those who joined us for last week's rather impromptu Fab Live. Which
impromptu. It was totally impromptu.
It was. But much appreciated by all. I think it was nice to have the gang back together for an hour or so on Monday evening last week. It's still up on the YouTube channel, I think, isn't it? And maybe even the Facebook page. I don't know where you can see it.
It's up on the YouTube and the Facebook. Yes, right, absolutely.
Yes. So do drop along and have a look. And who knows, maybe we'll do it again in the coming weeks. Yeah.
We need to keep people, including ourselves, entertained, don't we?
Exactly. Yes, we do. Yeah.
There you go. You've got all that to look forward to, plus messages from the Podsterons.
Yes, people have been emailing us, of course, at podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. They've been tweeting us and hashtagging us Gerry Anderson Podcast. They've been tagging you, I'm Jamie Anderson, and me, Richard N. James, and I'll be reading some of those out a little later on. And heading over to our Facebook page as well, or rather the group, the Podsterons, where they've been leaving messages and playing silly games. And, we have heard from Phil Steer. So that's something to look forward to.
It's always nice to get a Phil Steer email.
It is, yeah, exactly.
So thank you, Phil Steer. We'll hear from you later on.
Yeah.
Shall we have a Fab Fact, Richard?
I thought you'd never ask.
Here we go then, Fab Facts.
Now, time for this week's Fab Facts.
So this must be our, 80-something? Because we did have a bit of a break, didn't we, with the Fab Facts? We didn't start early, straight away, did we?
I can't remember, no. I mean, we've probably done 50, 60, 70 of them by now.
Yeah, certainly feels like it.
There's quite a lot. So, Richard, I know the normal format is that I've got a book of Fab Facts. I flick through the book of Fab Facts, you shout Fab, and I stop flicking through the Fab Facts, and then I read a Fab Fact from the page. But I thought...
Pretty much it,
just for Pod 101, that I'd do something a bit different.
Oh? What's happening?
Yeah. Well, Richard, seeing as we did this rather marvellous Fab Live recently, and you do a rather nice segment in there called Fab or Fib, don't you, where you bring out a few falsehoods and one
Truism.
truthhood?
Well, that's very nice of you to say so. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yes. Fab or Fib, very popular.
I thought, in recognition of your fine work,
Well, right.
I've got a document here which has all the scripts from all of our Fab Lives, and I would use one of your Fabs or Fibs as today's Fab Fact. Do you see what I've done there?
I see. So what you've done there is you've given yourself a bit of time off and not bothered to find your Fab Facts book.
Pretty much, yeah.
Fair enough.
So here's the list of episodes of Fab Live. Are you ready to shout Fab?
Okay, go for it.
Here we go.
Fab! Or Fib.
Nice. So, as you may have heard, that book is a little bit slimmer, so we have a few fewer pages to flick through. But you've landed on a rather special one. So it's that same day that we did Pod 50.
Right.
Which was Fab Live Live. Do you remember that one?
What? Well, hang on. But that was in Leicester then.
It was in Leicester.
Well, right.
So you did some rather special Fabs or Fibs there, which were drawn by Lee Sullivan. Do you remember?
I certainly remember that. Yes, and a few people walked home with the artwork, I think.
They did indeed.
Yeah.
And you raised some cash for charity by suggesting that. So here we go. This is the Fab from Fab Live, which is today's Fab Fact.
Okay.
Protector star Robert Vaughan is perhaps best known for fighting the evil forces of Thrush as the man from U.N.C.L.E.
Yes, that's true.
But, dear listener, did you know that MGM wanted the U.N.C.L.E. producers to rename the Thrush organisation because it sounded too much like Ian Fleming's Smersh?
Oh, yes, I remember that, yeah.
The new name that they settled on was Wasp.
Oh.
But they very soon had to change it back to Thrush to avoid comparisons with the hero organisation in Stingray.
Yes. Yeah. I should think they did.
Yes, so Thrush became Wasp because of Smersh, but because of Wasp in Stingray, Thrush stayed Thrush, not Wasp, and so was forever known as Thrush.
Clear as mud.
Great, there you go.
Yeah.
That's a very short and sweet and thrushy Fab Fact. So, unless you've got anything to add to it, Richard.
Well, just a point there. So, what about, copyright and so on? I know you can't copyright titles, but, Thrush, Wasp, Smersh, would they be copyright?
Well, Thrush and Wasp are just words, aren't they? So,
yes. Smersh.
Although, Lucasfilm did copyright Droid, didn't they? Which is a contraction of Android.
Yeah,
so, it's possible, but I think common use things would be a bit much.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless they had the same acronym and it was like passing off or copying.
Yeah. But you can see where the confusion might have arisen there, mightn't you? So,
Thrush, Smersh,
yes.
Wasp.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, nice one. Well, thanks for mining my back catalogue there, Jamie.
Pleasure. It was very easy, so thank you for doing that, doing my work for me. And I guess that brings us to the end of this week's Thrush Fact.
That was actually quite difficult to say, wasn't it? It was a good tongue twister for this time in the morning.
Fact.
Yeah, Thrush Fact. Anyway, now look, let's head on over to Twitter because people have been tweeting us and hashtagging us, hashtag Gerry Anderson Podcast. For example, Lost in Transition tweeted, I've now finished listening to hashtag Pod 100 of the Gerry Anderson Podcast. Yes, and I have to say, what a very enjoyable few days I've had going to and from work. Well, glad to be of service there. So thanks to Jamie and Richard for the insight and entertainment, and the Chris Dale reviews are always fun. Yes, aren't they just? And there's one coming up a little later on. Thunder Furybird. Now listen to this, Jamie. There's been a poll, a Twitter poll.
Oh.
Yeah. It was nice, says Thunder Furybird, to see Fab Live back, but who thinks that Richard James should stop doing his Terry Wogan impression on Fab Live? So obviously there were options, yes or no. 75% voted no.
So you should stop or you shouldn't stop?
I should not stop.
Brilliant. That's clear as mud also.
Yeah,
that's
excellent.
the theme of this episode. Well, were there many votes cast in this?
4. 3 for me carrying on and 1 for stopping.
Well, so I let you in on a secret,
Jamie.
Richard? I voted that you should be able to carry on doing your Terry Wogan impression.
woogly. Bruce
But
Cameron
now
Stewart.
I'm regretting it.
He also tweeted, I missed the live Fab Live, but just watched the recording on YouTube. The new system works much better, he says. Less freezing and sound dropouts. Nick Briggs' segment kept the show fresh. A previous podcast could be invited on for an update. Please do it again next month. So there we are, little constructive criticism.
Nice. So basically, don't bother getting together and spending a whole day getting ready to perform Fab Live for us, and also make sure you have other people, because otherwise it's boring.
Yeah, just
That's
throw
the
it together
summary.
at the last minute and it works so much better. No, actually, you're quite right there, Bruce. I mean, we've had this discussion, haven't we, Jamie? How smooth it all went. And how great it
was
looked
much
as well.
easier.
I liked the way you were able to pull out those comments and put them up on screen and so on. That was a very nice little feature.
Fantastic system.
Yeah, and finally then, for now, Chrissy Boy tweeted, well done with the excellent and entertaining #Pod100 of the Gerry Anderson podcast. Now, do you pay me now or later? Oh, I see. Wants a little payment for his praise, does he? Well, Chrissy Boy, consider this your payment. Pod 101. There you go.
Perfect. Yes, this will settle all outstanding bills that we've got.
Yes, well, let's hope
anywhere
so.
in the universe.
Yeah.
Lovely. Please do keep tweeting us, Podsterons, and email us, podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. And while you're thinking of what to tweet us or email us with, let's have some Gerry Anderson news.
Hooray!
Gerry Anderson news.
News.
Indeed. I'm going to recap on some bits of news from last week, but first of all, I'm going to let you in on a little secret, Podsterons. It's just between you and me. Let's exclude Richard here. No,
Hang on,
Richard,
what was
sorry,
that?
you're not invited to this bit. So the news is that we are going to be releasing very soon some rather special Derek Meddings and Bob Bell artwork.
Oh.
Never before available publicly to the Gerry Anderson store. These are both bits of artwork gifted to Dad. The piece of art by Derek Meddings is a large, funny, comedic sketch of AP Films in the Stingray days that Derek did, kind of illustrating all the silly stuff they got up to at the studios, which was given to Dad, and he had in his office from, well, I guess about 1962-3 onwards, forever, and is now on the wall at home.
Aww.
And another piece that painted for Dad by Bob Bell, art director from Thunderbirds, in around the year 2000, which was a little scene of them filming Thunderbirds, doing a Tracy Lounge scene.
Oh, yes.
And shows Dad, and you can quite clearly identify a number of the team, Christine Glanville, Bob Bell. I think you can identify Mary Turner or Judith Shutt in there. Yeah. It's just really lovely pieces that we're making available as posters and prints and canvas prints. So if you would like a lovely replica Derek Meddings or Bob Bell on your wall, and who wouldn't?
Who wouldn't, yeah.
Then they'll be available in the next few weeks. Keep an eye on the store for those. Talking of the store, as you may have been aware, we had some trouble with our manufacturer on-demand factories because of COVID-19. In fact, they all had to close across the US, the UK and Europe. All closed down for the safety of the teams there, which is totally understandable. Pleased to say that new measures have been brought in to keep everybody safe. The factories are now back up and running, not at quite at full speed, but they are up and running. So if you ordered something during shutdown, the queue has now been cleared and your item should be delivered shortly. And if you want a manufacturer on demand item, so a t-shirt or a polo shirt or a mug or a poster or a print or that sort of thing.
Or all of them, yes.
Or all of them, indeed, yes. They are now all available again, and there'll be probably a 2 to 3 day delay in dispatch just because of the new processes in the factories to keep people safe, slow things down a little bit. Yeah. But they're all available again, so that's rather nice.
Great, yes.
As we mentioned last week, you'll want to keep your ear to the ground this week, Anderson fans, because there's some interesting news coming, probably Wednesday or Thursday, maybe.
Oh, that's soon.
Yeah, so just stay tuned to all the usual Gerry Anderson social media outlets and websites, and you'll see the news there.
Great.
I do hope that you will also be watching Gerry Anderson on BritBox at the moment.
Oh, yes. I haven't yet.
Richard?
Yeah, I know. I'm not sure I can get it. I don't really... Because I'm old, I don't quite understand. I've got a Fire Stick. Could I find it on there, do you think?
What is this BritBox you're talking about? I don't think I've heard of it.
Digital watch? Yes.
Well, you can watch it on lots of devices.
Yeah.
I don't actually know if you can watch it on a Fire Stick.
You see.
But, yeah. If you are more technically adept than Richard James, Podsteron, then do make sure you sign up in the UK for a 30-day free trial of BritBox and watch all the Gerry Anderson stuff on there, because then it'll create more demand for Gerry Anderson stuff on BritBox.
Yes, it would. Absolutely right. Wouldn't that be great?
And that'll be rather nice, yes. Also, now we're halfway through the month, so I hope that you are making your Tracy Island as part of our Tracy Island Make competition. The instructions are on the Gerry Anderson website. Just pop along to gerryanderson.co.uk and look on the front page, or just search Tracy Island and you'll find it there. And then post us your makes to Tracy Island make@gerryanderson.co.uk if you want to email it, or just put it on social media with the hashtag Tracy Island Make.
Very nice.
And you could win £250 worth of goodies. More copies of the books from Joan Marie Verber are coming. Thankfully, she had a few more in stock.
Great.
And they'll be making their way over from the US shortly.
Yeah,
We've also managed to find 17, just 17 copies of the 7th book in that series, Arctic Adventure.
Oh.
And those have been tracked down thanks to one of our Podsterons.
Okay.
In fact, I think it was Isabel
Yeah.
posted about Arctic Adventure, which I wasn't aware about. And then we went looking and managed to find just 17 copies, so they'll be arriving in the store soon. Very rare one, written by Anthony Taylor. Complete the set. It's got brains on the cover.
So,
lovely stuff.
Nice little collection there for
Yes,
someone.
but unfortunately, only 17.
Yeah.
That's all we can find. They're quite a rarity, otherwise
Okay.
they don't really come up. And finally, this is quite a long Gerry Anderson news,
Isn't it? Yes.
Finally, for this one, part 2 of Chris Dale's Eagle Crashes catalogue is finally up
Great.
on the Gerry Anderson YouTube channel. Slight delay there, sorry about that. And you'll be able to see that right now if you want to see all the Eagle Crashes from year 2. And who doesn't want to see them all in one place? Then head over to youtube.com/Gerry Anderson TV and watch them there. And that now is the end of the Gerry Anderson news.
That was the news. That was the news. Very good. Isn't it amazing we still have lots of news, even though the whole world has shut down, it seems, around us?
Yes, there's still stuff happening. But, what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention or something?
Well, so they say. Yes, it's true.
Yeah. No, we've been very creative and there's been lots of stuff happening, hasn't there, Richard James?
Yes, there has. And we'll be talking about that a little more, maybe next week.
Yes, probably in Pod 102.
Hooray. Now, over to our emails. Now, I've got a sad one here from Duncan Moss that I feel I should read out. Hi, Jamie and Richard. I just wanted to tell you that a friend of mine from the care home where I work, Carol Ratcliffe, has sadly passed away while having an operation in hospital. Carol was a Gerry Anderson fan and had been enjoying the recent reruns of Space 1999 on the Horror Channel. She also liked Joe 90, and I would bring in DVDs for her to watch. Well done, Duncan. He says she expressed an interest in meeting both of you and asked lots of questions about the two of you. I tried to answer them as best I could to a lady who was autistic. She was quite a character, and I would have loved to see her become more involved with other fans, as she was quite lonely. We all miss her greatly. FAB Carol, best wishes as always, Duncan Moss. So yes, we send our thoughts and condolences to her friends and family, of course. Thanks for that, Duncan.
Yeah. Thanks for letting us know, Duncan.
Carl got in touch. Hello, Jamie, and hello, Richard. Hello, Carl.
Hello.
Yes. In case of what happened to last week, I most likely missed the cut-off to get an audio file in, and most likely this email will be late to make the recording cut-off, but there you go. I just want to say your award-pending podcast has reconnected me, I'm reading it literally, to the works of Gerry Anderson, and have learned so much about my favourite shows and discovered new ones, which I dip my toes into just to test the water. Very good. Carl says, I've also connected with so many Gerry Anderson fans across the planet. What a great wee community it really is. My all things merchy merch is growing steadily, especially in the vinyl record area, which is another great passion of mine. Yeah. In conclusion, thanks awfully, Jamie, Richard and Chris, for the hours of wonderful, insightful, intelligent, and entertaining work that you put out over the last 99 G-Pods. And here's to the next at least 100. Now, he's put a little Car Kite Anno from Carl. He's a Kiwi, isn't he? So that must be a little Car Kite Anno. I'm suggesting it might be that.
It might mean, go away, Richard, or something.
Probably
so
does.
Be careful.
Yeah. Scott Sadler got in touch to Jamie, Richard and Chris very late to the party this week, and I wasn't able to record a voice memo in time for recording the big 100, but nonetheless, let me say that I, as well as my boys Toby and Archie, are forever grateful for the hard, continuous work and input from all of you and Anderson Entertainment to keep this podcast going and reach the amazing 100 episodes. I still remember not ever having listened to a podcast ever in my life until Pod 1 back in July 2018. Wow, we've listened to every episode since then, from us relaxing and listening in a farm cottage on holidays, bumper special Christmas episodes, and tuning into episodes every Monday of my life's work in horticulture. Boys are so excited and proud to have been shown or mentioned in past podcasts and can't wait to meet you all again. Thank you for being a part of our lives every week, as well as all the Anderson shows we all get to enjoy now and forever. Many thanks and kind regards from Scott. Well, that's lovely, isn't it?
Thank you, Scott, Toby and Archie.
Yes.
Hello.
It's nice to think that in many ways we were the first podcast for a lot of people. And we've become a part of their weekly lives. It's quite nice, isn't it?
Yeah, we'd love to know, actually, are we the first podcast you've listened to?
Yeah.
Podsterons, and have we converted you to the world of podcasts, or is it just this one?
Yeah.
Let us know. podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk.
Yes. Now, I've got quite a few more, Jamie. Shall I plough on, or do you want to come back to these later?
Plough on with a couple more, and then we'll switch over to Chris Bowden, and then we'll come back to a few more, and then there's the Randomiser, of course. It's the 100th Randomiser, so lots of exciting stuff still to come.
Good, okay. Cameron Campbell got in touch to say, hi, Jamie/Richard.
Well, it's you, isn't it?
Yeah. I have been a regular listener to the podcast since Pod 1 and really enjoy the chat, guests and Chris Dale's contributions. Inactivity during lockdown has given me the opportunity to dive into my recently purchased new Captain Scarlet DVD set. Having tried and failed to watch on Saturday mornings when first broadcast, I've been pleasantly surprised by the quality of the show. Both production and storylines have been as good, if not better than the original, which was my favourite of the Super Marination series. I particularly appreciate the increased presence of Captain Black, who rather oddly was the character I most wanted to appear each week in the 60s. What I do miss is the boastful announcement at the start of exactly what the Mysterons intended to do. He says, next up, much to Jamie's disappointment, is the Joe 90 Blu-ray set. Yeah. Although I watched when originally broadcast, it failed to fully capture my imagination in the same way that the previous programmes had done. I hope the rewatching Jamie with adult eyes may bring out the best of it. Regarding possible future guests, he says, you may give Steve Davis a try. I noted on a recent rerun of his appearance on The Chase that the two questions answered with speed and confidence were sci-fi based, and he's probably of an age that Gerry Anderson series were influential in that interest. Who knows, maybe Spectrum pushed him into taking on the multicoloured balls of the Green Bays. Anyhow, he says, thanks for what you're both doing and looking forward to the next pod. P.S. Did I spy Richard as one of the vultures in Great Expectations, shown on TV recently? Take care, Cameron Campbell. Crikey. Well, that was a long old email, wasn't it? Thanks for that, Cameron. Lots of stuff in there. I like the way he's suggesting that he enjoyed Captain Scarlet, new Captain Scarlet, alongside the original. It's not a competition, is it? It's something that can be enjoyed in and of itself. It doesn't have to be better than or worse than. It's just something else.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
Enjoy the whole lot. There's no attempt to replace anything. It's just a new way to access stuff. It's like we're not trying to replace anything by with the podcast.
No.
The podcast is just another thing you can enjoy alongside everything else,
Indeed,
should you wish.
That's right. And yes, Cameron, I was in Great Expectations, yes, which I think was shown recently. And finally, for now, then, we've got one here from Neil Stoker, who says, thank you, Jamie, brackets, and to Richard. Listen to the 100th podcast, which I have replayed as I enjoyed it so much, just like the previous 99. And I'm also listening again to Chris's Randomiser. Keep up the good work. Mondays wouldn't be the same without the podcast. Kind regards, best wishes from Neil. Lovely. Yeah.
Cheers, Neil.
So, Neil, I wonder, are you also subscribed to the Randomiser podcast from Chris Dale? If you're enjoying it so much. I mean, I would be. Yeah.
Well, I mean, no better time than the 100th Randomiser for that. So we can try and get more people to subscribe to that when we get to the Randomiser in a little bit.
Yeah, let's do that.
But before that, should we have an interview?
Oh, yes, please.
I mean, you're having it whether you like it or not.
Okay.
But this week's interview is with Chris Bowden. It's part one with him. Chris is a producer. He works for Mackinnon and Saunders. He's a very nice chap. He's worked on all sorts of stuff like, Postman Pat, for example. And we talk about Postman Pat in this interview at some point because there may or may not be some Anderson references that made their way into some episodes of Postman Pat, would you believe?
Really? I had no idea.
Yeah, most unexpected. Okay. Anyway, we talk about Chris's love, his growing love of the shows, how he got involved in the industry. It's actually quite an interesting thing about how he stepped from being a fan into the profession and his route into the industry. So here is part one with Chris Bowden.
I'm Chris Bowden. I'm a producer at Mackinnon and Saunders, and 20 years ago, I was the line producer on Lavender Castle.
20 years ago.
1999, yeah.
When I had a full head of hair.
That's right. I remember it well.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Happy times. So we've actually known each other a very long time in a weird way, although I always find it a bit weird knowing Dad's colleagues from when I was a kid, because I perpetually feel like I'm the kid and you're the grown-up. So it's a bit weird now having this conversation as two grown-ups. Anyway, Chris, you are a listener to the Gerry Anderson podcast, as well as being a producer at Mackinnon and Saunders and having the Gerry Anderson connection. So I'm glad we're able to do this. And I have to say to Podsterons, when I asked Chris if he would do this, he said, oh gosh, have you reached the bottom of the barrel already so that you now have to be scraping it? But Chris is going to be a great interviewee. So I don't know why he would say that, but clearly that shows he's very self-deprecating. So we're going to get on to Lavender Castle and stuff later on. But I'm very much hoping, Chris, and I know you are really, and you're a bit of an Anderson fan because I know you have a particular fondness for Stingray, for example. So can you take me back in time to your earliest Gerry Anderson memories? It doesn't have to be the specific first one, but your earliest Anderson impressions.
I think I probably can give you the specific first one.
All right. Exact date and time?
Well, roughly. I think probably going back to about 1969, 1970, I would have been 4 or 5 years old. I would have been sat in a terraced house in Stoke-on-Trent with my beloved grandparents, particularly my beloved grandfather, and we were planted in front of the TV, and we were in the ATV region back then. It was central later on, watching Thunderbirds, and that is one of my that's one of my very earliest memories as a human being. So, Anderson has been in my life constantly throughout, from the first time I can remember anything, really. And I also remember very, very clearly that for some reason, Space 1999, a bit later on, used to go out Sunday lunchtimes in our region. So we would eat our Sunday dinner with my grandparents, and we would watch Space 1999. But I also have, super fond memories and super clear memories of watching Fireball XL5, Stingray, and Joe 90, which I think in the 70s must have been going out in the school holidays because, you would get an episode a day or what have you. And I just lapped it up and loved them all. But I have to say, Scarlet was my favourite.
Okay, well, funnily enough, that chimes with Paul Franklin, who listeners will hear from either before or after you. I'm not quite sure in which order, but there you go. You're certainly not in the minority with that. So you sat and watched Thunderbirds with your grandfather. So was he watching it as well and was interested, or was he watching it for your benefit?
I never knew, because he was such a great guy that he would always be there. We would always be talking about it. And it would all kind of get conflated with his memories of being a tank driver in World War II, And there was a lot of stuff where he would point out these tracked vehicles and he would liken them to the Sherman tank that he was driving across Europe at the time, And yeah, it was such a great time. It was such a golden time, really. And I think probably because of all of that, because of that interest that he put in me, the vehicles are really something that, I love and have a huge interest in. So, as I said, from Scarlet, I mean, vehicles, let's face it, across the whole of the Anderverse, but from Scarlet, the SPV, wonderful, a tank without tracks, but has got backup tracks at the back, the MSV, the saloon car, the Angels, which is, there you go, Joe. Jamie's now holding up a model of an SPV, and I am jealous.
Got my dinky SPV.
I don't have one anymore.
Do you know what? The only sad thing is that Scarlet's fallen out and disappeared, unfortunately. So that's rather sad. But no, the vehicles were the thing that grabbed you, were they?
Totally. Just everything about the whole of those shows. But for Scarlet in particular, it's just that the style of the whole thing. I really loved the more realistic proportions, just very much so. And yeah, Scarlet, looking back, I suppose it was super dark, really.
Yeah, so how old would you have been when you were watching Scarlet then, roughly?
I would probably have been about 10. It would have been I guess I was watching reruns mid-70s,
Yeah,
I was born in 65. I was born in 65, so, everything I caught was on reruns. But as I say, looking back, it was super dark, but back then we just all took it in our stride as kids. It was just it was just this thing. But when you think about it, the whole indestructible thing, it's like every week you're watching your hero die in agony, and you kind of wonder, does he remember this? Does he carry this trauma of this death every time? What's that doing to Paul Metcalf's head?
Yeah. But what do you think? Do you think he did? Do you think he remembered and felt it every time?
I just don't like to
think about it now. Think about it right this minute. Well, surely he must be able to remember it.
Some part of the mysteronization that takes away the last sort of few seconds of death. My God, it doesn't bear thinking about, really, does it?
It's pretty grim.
And also around the same time, and again, the next one, Joe 90. And I know it's a particular favourite of yours, Jamie.
Oh, I really love Joe 90, as you well know.
I know you do. And to be fair, as a kid, and everybody I knew, all the kids I knew, hated watching kids in TV shows. It's like, we don't want to watch kids. We want to aspire. We want to watch adults doing all this stuff. But I loved Joe 90. Again, the effects in there, the design in there, the music I thought was fantastic. And it was just something which maybe, I don't know, I think Chris Dale had said that, Joe 90 was a bit of a zenith for everything Anderson. But the detail, the amount of detail, and there was an episode, and I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly, you may tell me better, but Colonel McLean, which was the one where they're delivering the explosives in the trucks.
With the big explosive truck.
It's based on Wages of Fear, basically, in the movie. But there was a bit where they're going down a hill and Joe's changing gear, and you get the shot of him double declutching it, which is what you actually do. And at the time, I knew what double declutching was, and I thought, that's ace. That is absolutely fantastic. But it's that sort of stuff that when you're a kid, it just inspired you to, get your head down on the carpet, close one eye, and so you could create that sort of point of view of, of looking at a vehicle. And it's one of the things that, got me into making models at the time. But
but it's all because it's all based in the real, right? And it's not because these people have gone off and researched, how do you change gear in this sort of vehicle? They knew because they had been doing it, or they had a fascination. They'd been in the RAF, or they'd been in the army, they'd driven stuff, they were involved in aviation, or at least fascinated by it. And so everything was based in the real, plus the going to World's Fair and that sort of thing, seeing what was coming and what was being imagined. Everything was grounded there. So it makes sense that it looked and felt really real to you.
Exactly. And it was just these tiny little throwaway details, which I think, I work in animation now, and it's always the tiny throwaway details which you maybe wouldn't miss if they weren't there, but they make so much more of an enhanced, sort of reality. And I think one thing with Anderson, and certainly a lot of what we do in stop motion nowadays at Mackinnon and Saunders, it's something, I call it, it's like concentrated reality. When you look at one of these models, it's like everything, reality is shrunk down to this hyper-concentrated little nuggets. And it's wonderful. But again, Joe 90 is such a dark show when you think about it. It's this has been discussed on the pod before, I know that, but I kind of always wondered, so he's got experiences of adults planted into his brain, but how far does that go? I mean, has he got questionable experiences in there as well, or does his dad filter out all the mucky stuff? Who knows? Better not to think about it.
Well, they didn't filter out the stuff, did they? Because was it Traitor, the one where he was given the brain pattern of somebody who was a traitor, and so he became a traitor himself because they didn't realize. So I'm pretty sure that's right. Somebody will correct me there, but so there are these kind of unsanitized things that must have gone into this kid's brain, and even then, even if they were removed afterwards, he still must have the memory of doing the things, but now would be lacking the knowledge of knowing how to do those things, and that would be incredibly troubling to a human mind. So I kind of imagine that he is, in his 50s or whatever, sort of probably a kind of slightly nutty, split personality, conspiracy theorist hoarder, living in a disgusting flat with screens everywhere displaying all the latest conspiracy theories. Surely that's what it would turn that guy into, right?
Well, I have a better thing, theory of how he would have turned out. I think he'd be sat there with Captain Scarlet discussing these things that went on in their life, and I'm sure his dad could have sorted them out. If you can get memories in there, surely you can dig them out. So who knows? Who knows?
I don't know. Okay, we'll leave that for another one.
This darkness, though, this sort of underlying darkness to these shows. And as I said, it's better not to think about it. And as kids, we didn't. But the fact that you knew that there was this real edge to them, even as a kid, I think was really key to making it feel that you weren't being talked down to. You were in on this, and you were treated with a bit of respect by the people making the film. So that, looking back, I think was a huge part of it. They were very aspirational shows, really, I think.
Yeah, well, that never talk down to your audience thing was one of Dad's mantras. For
absolutely,
when people said, what's the success, what's the formula thing, he would say, I don't know. If I knew, I would have made something as successful as Thunderbirds 20 times over. But the one thing I do know is don't talk down to your audience, and also make something that you actually love yourself, that you would watch. So that's why these things feel adult. It comes from two places: one of of respect to the audience, and one of wanting to enjoy it yourself.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And I think it's very sound advice.
Did the Secret Service come into your region, or did you miss that?
It did. Bizarrely, I think it was a Sunday tea time, but somebody I'm sure will correct me. But it was one of those that I connected very peripherally with, and at the time I couldn't quite work it out. In fact, I think I've learned more about the Secret Service from the primers on YouTube than I have ever since. I do remember liking the idea of seeing the puppet's actual scale. I mean, that I found really a fascinating thing. When you've got a real person sat next to the actual puppet, it wasn't. I have to say, one of my favourites.
Nah, it was weird and quirky, and I kind of love it now in a lot of ways. But it was a bit odd. Before we leave the Supermarionation era, Chris, what about toys and what about TV 21? Did they come into your reality?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, so here I am really interacting with all of this stuff in a major way in the mid-70s, and there was virtually no material available. So no comics, no annuals. I was buying stuff from jumble sales, these old annuals that kids had been, sort of torn and ripped them and scribbled all over them. But for me, they were an absolute gold mine. And I do remember very vividly, and I was looking for them this morning because I was going to put them on camera to show you, and I can't find them. But in the early 80s, somebody discovered a warehouse full of mint condition annuals that had never been sold from sort of the late 60s. And they even in the early 80s, they were selling for about £10 each. And I scraped together all the money I could afford, and I bought 3 of these, and I think I got a Scarlet one and a couple of TB21s. And of course, most annuals nowadays are A4 in size, but these were oversized, so they just felt these big, weighty tomes. And it was full of all the backstories, which is, where I found out that Captain Scarlet was Paul Metcalf and Captain Blue was Adam Svensson, and so on and so on. And they were real people. They became real people. And I used to just spend hours gazing at these images and magnifying glass virtually, looking at the detail, a trim on the SPV. And I still look at these things once a year. It's, and that was a real big thing to me. And another huge thing, because we were in this sort of drought of being able to get hold of Anderson stuff, really, was I used to go with my dear grandparents again to Blackpool on holiday every year. And I'm sure you know where this is going. There was an Anderson exhibition on the Golden Mile called Space City, Gerry Anderson's Space City.
Yeah.
And I would go there for a week, and I would be in that place every single day. I would drive my grandparents mad to the point where they occasionally came and dug me out of it. I've got my old 35mm camera. I would have been 13, 14, maybe 13 at this stage.
Yeah.
Got this camera. I took dozens and dozens of pictures, some of which I've sent to you recently.
You have indeed, and we'll definitely share at least one of those.
And the good thing was that a couple of the attendants who worked there in their trademark white overalls were fans. And one guy was not that much older than me. He was only probably 17 working there. And we became friends. And over the course of a year or so, I was soon behind the barriers there. When it was a fairly quiet time, I'd go in, I'd be there looking at the eagle, touching it, looking at the hawk, the moon buggy. I once kept my jacket in the boot of Fab 1. And the lovely thing about all of this was at the end of the exhibition, there was a little kiosk which was selling models and what bits of merchandise you can, and that was usually manned by a young lad called Mark Harris. I found out later on in years.
Yes,
and flash forward many years, and I'll talk a little bit later. He became an art director in movies. He's done the Bond series, he's done the Star Wars movies, done the Marvel things. And he was always in that little kiosk putting a model together, an Anderson model together. And there you go, from whatever he was then, 17, 18 years old. And I met him not so long ago, and he was literally a giant in the British film industry. So it's an amazing connection to have.
Yeah, I mean, Mark became J.J. Abrams' sort of right-hand man in terms of production design, didn't he? Because in the first of the most recent trilogy, there's a moment where they're in the Millennium Falcon trying to repair something, and they put a call out for a Harris wrench. And that was JJ's nod to Mark being the guy who fixes everything. It's the tool to make everything work. So, yeah. But amazing that he started sat in a kiosk at Space City fiddling about with models.
Blackpool. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, and you started really in the same place.
In many ways. I mean, it was such an inspirational place for me to be. I mean, I was just drinking all this stuff in. The other thing I don't know, you will know about this, I don't know if everybody does, but, Gerry Anderson had a half a page article in Look In magazine every week.
Yes.
The space page, where we were introduced to the Star Cruiser comic strip, which ended up becoming I think a Dinky Toy. They did a run of the model.
Airfix model kit.
It might have been Airfix, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And to my eternal joy and pride, there was a competition for designer spacecraft, which I dutifully got my felt tip pens out and drew something, and it was a winner. It was one of the ones that was there. So I was absolutely, I could, when you get that magazine and open it up, and it was just like literally my jaw hit the floor. That's my drawing. And look, Gerry Anderson must have seen this.
So it's in there. I don't know whether
it did. It is in there, yeah.
Okay, and have you got a copy of that?
Somewhere, but I don't know where. Somewhere, yes. I have definitely got it.
One of our lovely Podsterons will be able to find that. Podsterons, if you could find Chris's winning spaceship design entry, please email it to me. And
that would be lovely. I'd love to see it. So if anyone does have it, please send it in.
Yeah, maybe we can get Chris Thompson to build it as a CG model as well for you, Chris, to bring it to life. Wouldn't that be amazing? Anyway, so totally. Look In was feeding your fascination even more. So actually, although you were you'd missed the golden era of Supermarionation in a way, because you come to it in the 70s and through to the early 80s, you were still actually getting your fill in a different way.
It was just hard to come by, and we did go to, apart from looking, we did go to extraordinary lengths, and of course it was about the time where I was getting old enough to go to conventions. I particularly remember going off to Leeds to a Dragon Con, I think it was 81, 82, where I met Ed Bishop, which was, again, awesome. Brilliant, so good. And it was this whole thing about models as well, which is sort of, I suppose, steering my career path in a little bit of in a way, because it was all coinciding with Star Wars coming out, 77, which is something I love as well. But it seemed that all of a sudden you could find books on how this stuff was done. You can find magazine articles. And so, I was drinking all of that in. And I remember my good friend down in Stoke, and Brian Wycherley, if you're listening, Brian, hope you're okay. We put together an Eagle transporter, and we spent at least an afternoon with some talcum powder and a sieve, dropping it over this Eagle transporter to make it look like it had crashed in the snow, which was trying to replicate that famous scene out of one of the episodes. I mean, what a bunch of geeks, really, as kids we were. But it was all just feeding the stuff about trying to get detail and reality into stuff, and then taking some terrible photographs of it, which I have somewhere.
Oh, good, Chris, you've got to dig out all these things. We need to publish the Chris Bowden fanboy collection.
Oh, God, yeah. So, something to be proud of, isn't it?
It's amazing. So you mentioned Space 1999 there. We've skipped over UFO and Space 1999, but I'm assuming that they actually were around at the perfect time for you, growing out of or past the puppets maybe?
1999 certainly was smack for me, because I was 10 years old when that came out. UFO, I was a bit too young. But I kind of came to UFO later on reruns, and kind of really enjoyed that. Particularly the Shadowmobiles, which I always cite as being some of the most realistic stuff. Probably next to the rocket liftoff in Doppelganger, probably some of the most realistic stuff ever.
That liftoff is so good. I could just watch that on loop, I think, because it's
Meddings,
so amazing. Yeah, that was Derek's kind of peak, because the scale, I guess, and the shooting outside and stuff. It just
because I'm sure they also must have used a lot of the stuff they learned on that doing the Moonraker space shuttle liftoffs as well, which again were pre-space shuttle, and they were stunning.
Yeah, incredible stuff.
They were anyway. So so there I was, geek in my late teens, loving everything from Disney to Star Wars to Star Trek, Anderson, all things sci-fi. And that sort of steered me in Stoke-on-Trent, atypically for most of the people I knew, into art college, to try and do something along those lines.
Amazing. So what year would this have been?
I think I rocked up into college about 84, something like that.
Okay, 84. So Terrorhawks era, dare I ask if Terrorhawks came into your radar, or whether you were an anti-Terrorhawks person?
Came into the radar and went out of the radar. So I didn't.
Chris.
I did. To be fair, watch the first few episodes again at my grandma's. Possibly my grandfather had passed away at this point, so I used to go down and continue to keep a company. And I think I do have a memory of watching it down there. I remember liking the Rolls Royce and things like that. But it didn't quite resonate with me, I'm afraid, as much as some of the earlier stuff.
So not only are you a Joe 90 fan, but you're not a Terrorhawks fan, so you've lost a couple of brownie points there, I'm afraid.
I can see we're moving to opposite sides of the table here, aren't we?
It's fine. We'll bring you back by the time we get to Lavender Castle. So you go to art college in 84 with the aim of doing what? What were you thinking at that point?
I joined a course doing what was called multidisciplinary design. So we went through every sort of phase of, from graphic design to product design to ceramics to this, that, and the other. And I wanted to be a graphic designer. That was where my interest lay. But I kind of found, as so many times in my life, that my ambition was sort of outstripped my ability. So I found my way into. No, it's true. So I found my way into what was called the audio-visual department at the time, run by a couple of guys. One guy, John Jordan, who famously had worked closely with Stanley Kubrick on Clockwork Orange and what have you as a sound recordist, but also as part of Kubrick's sort of brain trust, which is, if you look it up, quite a fascinating thing. They would bring a production to a halt if Kubrick couldn't work out a way forward, and he'd get various people from the set to sit down and say, right, we need to, nut this out. We need to figure this out. And they could be there for a couple of days with the production on hold. And John was a part of that. And then another guy, Murray Carden, terrific couple of guys, and really sort of had a bit of a maverick approach to stuff. They we were learning about making films, but they said, we will never teach you how to make a film. We're never going to teach you how to edit. What we're going to do is teach you how to think, and we're going to teach you how to solve problems. And if you can solve problems, then you can make a film, and then you can edit. And it all kind of came from that point of view. We did learn how to edit, and we did learn how to make films, of course.
Yeah.
But it was far more about problem solving. And I have to say that is something I carry forward with me every single day. There's not a day goes by that I don't actually think about one of the little techniques that they taught us and use it to sort of to try and see a problem. And as you know, creating stories, creating films, creating scripts is all about posing problems and solving them, either in a practical sense to make the film or in a dramatic sense to what your characters are doing, on screens.
Yeah.
All of that kind of stuff came to play. So I got a lot out of the course. It was terrific. Down in Stoke-on-Trent Polytechnic at the time. It's now Staffordshire University.
But it'll always be the Poly to you.
Still a great play, but it's still the Poly to me. But it's still a great play.
Okay, so you finish there, and then what happens next?
So I came out with my Bachelor of the Arts degree, and
congratulations,
with all these wonderful ideas on my head, and I went to make corporate videos. Which so many people have that exact reaction. So many people do turn their nose up at that sort of thing. But again, I spent 8 years doing that, from sort of around 87 through to 95, and I think. Well, I know. I actually, again, it is a very direct inspiration from Gerry, really, which was that I'd read many interviews where, he'd been confronted with the task of making these puppet shows, which he didn't really want to make because he wanted to make grown-up live action. But, if he was going to make a puppet show, he was going to make the best puppet show he possibly could.
Absolutely.
And I thought, okay, well, I've got a job, which is great. I'm actually working, sort of doing the thing I want to do. There's a lot to learn here. So if I was confronted with making a video about a printing plate or about any particular product or a radio that we might have to teach somebody to use, it's like, what's the best way I can do this? How can I best get this idea across? And, I'm going to find the challenge. I'm going to make the best damn thing I can, and I'm going to learn as much as I can from it. So I tried as much as I could to apply that to what I did. And we did have a couple of amazing clients, possibly the best being British Aerospace was one of our clients in this company. A company called Spoken Image, by the way, still going in Manchester. Amazing people, lifelong friends. I'm still in touch with a lot of them. I've been blessed with the people I've worked with throughout my career. But yeah, so we were doing, I was charged with doing a history of British Aerospace Woodford, which was a site just south of Manchester, which was most famous for manufacturing based on Lancaster bombers. It was the old Avro Air Corporation. And I got to interview one of their chief engineers who'd retired at the time. And he was a chap called Dougie Godfrey. And in the course of this, probably about an hour-long conversation with him, one of the key things that stood out was that the Lancasters for the Dam Busters raid were fitted out to carry the bouncing bombs in Woodford. And Guy Gibson came to the plant and met with Dougie Godfrey personally. So he actually met Guy Gibson. For those who don't know, Guy Gibson was the squadron leader charged with leading the Dam Busters. And Dougie personally got on his hands and knees with a hacksaw and a drill and hacksawed out the hole in the bottom of Guy Gibson's Lancaster bomber, which was, it's, for me as an aviation fan, was just an amazing thing. Other things at that time, we did another aerospace video. Brian Blessed did the voiceover for us because we wanted a kind of voice of God, and we got Brian Blessed in there, and I got him to do a little recording to his famous "Gordon's Alive" thing for us, which we happily did. And he was fascinated at the time with mountaineering, and he was going on and on and on about, not going on, it was in an interesting way, about making a faux documentary about climbing Olympus Mons on Mars. He desperately wanted to do that at the time. And, other weird people that you encounter when you're making corporate videos. I once directed Branagh. I directed Kenneth Branagh to do a voiceover for us because he started his career at the Reading Octagon, and we were making a video about Reading, and he kindly agreed to do the voice. And he was at the time preparing to make his Frankenstein film, I think out at Shepperton, possibly.
Right.
And he couldn't spare the time to come to a studio, so he said, come to Shepperton and we'll do it there. And we'd had a studio booked for us, but it was a studio where you record an orchestra. So this thing was, about the size of 2 tennis courts. And Kenneth Branagh was sat on a stool in the middle with a single microphone, and we were sat about 30 feet away trying to direct him. And he did a terrific job, and he was hugely cooperative and a really, really pleasant chap. He told us a little bit about working with Francis Ford Coppola, and because he was producing the film and what have you, and that De Niro was coming. And at the time, they'd just finished the Prince of Thieves film, the Kevin Costner Robin Hood film, on site. And he said, the set's out back. He said, go and have a look around. So we ended up going to have a look around the set there as well, which, for me, a fan at the time, was just, I'm pinching myself. I'm at Shepperton Studios. I've just met Kenneth Branagh. I'm looking around a real movie set, It was super
Weirdly,
exciting.
Mum would have been working there at the same time then.
Oh, my God, really? Wow.
She was on Prince of Thieves, yeah.
Wow.
So you're probably in the same space without knowing it.
Yeah. Well, I did go to the canteen at lunchtime, so she was probably in there.
There you go. It's a small world, all this business, isn't it?
It is very much so.
So although it was corporate videos, which are, sounds boring, you still had some fun doing that. Yeah. But you didn't want to stay in that, obviously, or you didn't stay in it.
I stayed for 8 years, so,
Wow.
I learned an awful lot, as I say, and you become, a jack of all trades. But my next job was probably the dream job, apart from the one I have now, which was I managed to secure a job at a studio in Manchester called Cosgrove Hall, who Podsterons might know for Danger Mouse, Duckula, Jamie and the Magic Torch, Chilton and the Wheelies, Cockleshell Bay, Wind in the Willows. It was a very well
Never heard of any of them. No, nobody knows Cosgrove Hall at all.
It was very well established. And bizarrely, the way I got the job was that my wife, who is 1,000, if not 1,000,000 times more talented than I am, and an incredibly talented puppet maker and costume maker and what have you, she got a job there in the costume department around 1989. She started socializing with the guys at the studio, because Cosgrove Hall had the most amazing social life and the most amazing people working there. And as a result of that, I met Peter Saunders and Ian Mackinnon, who became very, very, very good friends. And around 1995, I think it was at my wife's 30th birthday, I bumped into a lady called Jackie Cockle, who's a producer at Cosgrove Hall, and she went on to be big news in the industry. She produced Bob the Builder, she produced Timmy Time at Aardman's, a wonderful woman. And I remember she came up to me at this party and said, when am I going to see your CV? And of course, it was on her desk within about 24 hours.
24 minutes.
Yeah. So they offered me a 6-month contract. So I left my permanent job for a 6-month contract, and I ended up staying at Cosgrove Hall for 13 fantastic years. And it was, as I say, a wonderful place, wonderful people, run by Brian Cosgrove and Mark Hall, who are, deservedly so sort of giants in the UK animation industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very talented, hugely decent men. That's. I mean, I'm still in touch with Brian. We were planning to go to dinner just before this virus thing hit. So I'm hopeful we'll meet up after, but just two hugely lovely men. And the company really, it sort of fallen on hard times, because they used to be owned by Thames Television, and that franchise was lost. And about, 100 more people were made redundant. And when I came along, the company was still in the same building, but quite small in terms of people, and it was just starting the ascent again. So I was hugely lucky to be there at that particular amount of time. And it was at the time, but it became probably a real hub for animation in the north of England, really. And we have quite a healthy industry in Manchester right now and roundabouts. And I think most people can trace a link back to Cosgrove Hall at some point there. So, it really was a wonderful place to work. My first job there was as an assistant producer. I worked on the very last ever stop motion series of Noddy for the BBC. I went on then to do a show called Okie Doke.
Yes.
Which, you remember Okie Doke?
Of course I do. Yeah, I remember the song and everything.
Wow. And that was only two voices on that to do all the characters, which are David Holt, who I know is going to be on the pod probably before me.
Yes, he is.
David Holt and Kate Harbour, both, I think, were in Lavender. Yeah. Yeah,
and I worked with Kate on a Doctor Who thing for Big Finish not too long ago, so yes.
I mean, again, that was a weird thing, actually, from coming out of corporates where I'd done sort of, voiceover stuff, but actually sitting down with these phenomenally talented animation voice actors who can just emote and just pick up a script and read it immediately and switch between 7 different voices, all of which are completely distinct, was almost, make your jaw hits the floor. Again, it's a pinch you moment. I'm a fan and I'm watching this happen before my eyes, From then I did a show called Fetch the Vet. And I'm conscious, Podsterons listening, I bet, there's so much stuff that we did that I've done that you wouldn't know about unless you had children of around 3 to 5 years old at the time, or you were a child of 3 to 5 years old at the time. But Fetch the Vet was a stop-motion show about a vet and had a great voice cast. John Gordon Sinclair from Gregory's Girl and many other things. Janet James, who's a local artist, who's a great friend, wonderful voice artist. David Holt again. And Floella Benjamin, you must have heard of Floella.
Yes, Dame Floella Benjamin, right?
Yeah. Well, she, as we were making the show, she was such great fun as well, but as we were making the show, I think she was awarded her OBE, I think. And she said, "Oh, you must all come to my party." And we were like, "Really?" And she said, No, come on. So off we went to some club in London and, all these wonderful, wonderful people were there. And we felt a little bit out of place, of course. But I was with David Holt, and maybe David will refer to this story, I don't know. But it was something that made my day. David had been working with Tom Baker on something a few weeks before, and Tom Baker was at the party. And I was like, wow, it's Tom Baker, it's my doctor. And he said, well, I'll introduce you. And I was like, what? I nearly dropped my drink. So we went over and we had a chat, and he was very gracious. He was holding court, but he was very gracious and spoke to David. Flash forward maybe 3 or 4 years, Cosgrove Hall, myself and a colleague, wanted to adapt Tom's book, The Boy Who Kicked Pigs. And we set about this, and we long story short, we ended up arranging a meeting with Tom in Soho in London. So we went down there, and I took one of my other colleagues with me, who was a huge Doctor Who fan. I mean, you think you're a Doctor Who fan. This guy is the Doctor Who fan. He lives in California now. He went to work for Lucasfilm, hugely talented sculptor called Darren Marshall. And he went to Lucasfilm, and he ended up designing the Clone Wars animated show and various stuff. Worked directly with George Lucas at Skywalker Ranch. So we took ourselves off to London. We met Tom. I was very nervous because Tom, I wouldn't say had a reputation, but he's a big personality, and we'd all heard the stuff in recording booths where he berated directors and things like that, and we were a little bit nervous. So we picked him up from a recording session that was doing, and we took him to dinner at Wagamama's. It's kind of where he wanted to go. And I'd said to my friend, don't mention Doctor Who. We're professionals. We don't want to look like fanboys. Just keep a lid on it. So we're sat in Wagamama's looking at the menus, and of course there's all these very exotic names for the food. And we could see Tom looking at them, and my friend just said, I think you've fought most of these, haven't you, Tom? And he just, because it sounded like Doctor Who type creatures, and Tom laughed, he got it, and it kind of broke the ice. But we then spent, and it's probably, apart from getting married, it's probably one of the best days I've ever had in my life. We went and
nice save there by preempting that.
Yeah. Well, my wife is next door. And he took us drinking to all of the pubs he used to go drinking in Soho. So he was hanging out there in the early 70s with Francis Bacon and all those guys. And we just went into these pubs. And instead of being what we feared, which was this huge bombastic personality, he just ended up being an incredibly sweet, polite, attentive man. And we spent some time talking about the project, but we spent most of the time talking about his mum and my grandmum, who were of the same generation, and how, when Tom had made some money, he wanted to take his mum out for a really beautiful meal, and he did. And she just felt a little bit like a fish out of water, and what she really wanted was fish and chips down a nice cafe, which was exactly the same sort of thing I would have experienced with my mum. So with the three of us, we're all, sort of, don't want to use this term, working class lads, working class boys we were, and we shared that, and it was such a good experience, and we drank so much beer. And we went into these pubs and we were standing up and we said, "Shall we sit down, Tom?" And he said, "Oh no, I swore I'd never sit down in a pub in Soho again." So we just stood up.
That sounds like a very Tom Baker phrase. That
it was. I won't go on, but it was a wonderful day, and it was a nice connection. And very, very sadly, we couldn't quite get the interest from a broadcaster in making the adaptation, but because it is a fantastically well-written, dark story. If you've never read it, The Boy Who Kicked Pigs, it's wonderful.
Okay, I'll put it onto my long list of things to watch and read. Thank you very much, Chris. More Chris Bowden next week.
Great.
Interesting stuff about early days of fandom and stepping from beyond the fan to behind the curtain in many ways.
Yeah, which actually is a more of a sort of well-trodden path these days, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Absolutely.
Fan to producer or fan to writer, but certainly back in those days, it was very difficult to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, whereas now you look at somewhere like, I don't know, Big Finish perhaps.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's full of them.
Run by
fans who've now become pros.
Yeah,
so
that's right. Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, lovely. Thank you, Chris. More Chris next week. Do email us and let us know if you enjoyed Chris's first part.
Yeah.
Podcast at gerryanderson.co.uk, and I shall pass on your kind messages to him. If you send any unkind ones, I will delete them. So
fair enough. Bother. You're listening to the Gerry Anderson podcast. Don't forget, of course, that you can subscribe to us on whichever platform you're listening to us on. Just hit the follow or the like or the subscribe button, and that makes sure that you will always be notified every time a new episode drops. You can also leave us a rating if you're so inclined. Say a few nice words and give us a few stars if you fancy it. And also
five,
share us
ideally.
Sorry?
5, not a few. 5 stars
if you could. And of course, share us with your friends so they can hear us too. Now, over on our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Podsterons, Phil Markham says, was everyone aware that the Horror Channel are going to show Space 1999 again from this coming Monday each weekday at 3 p.m? So that's worth keeping an eye out for. Roger Smith posted, Thunderbird 3, red or orange?
Oh, don't get me started on that one.
Yeah, well, there is one person who knows, of course. Chris Thompson responded and said, Carnival Red is the closest Halford spray paint colour, but it does lean in on the orange side. A good comparison is to compare it to the toys, the 2004 version and the Thunderbirds Are Go version, which are all true red, and then see the difference in the filming model. So that's interesting. So
thank you, Chris.
It has both been red and orange in its time, depending on which medium you're watching it through. Now, finally, I did mention this. Phil Steer posted on our Facebook group, which is always a pleasure, of course, to read. He says, I have an idea for a new feature. It's a variation on the Randomiser, in which Chris Dale listens to and comments on a random episode of the podcast. He would, of course, then have to comment on his own performance with the original series Randomiser, and after a while could find himself having to comment on his performance with this new podcast Randomiser, commenting on his performance with the original series Randomiser.
It sounds a bit like a podcast chronic hysteresis.
Yes, you're right. Yes, well, James Fielding agrees and said, that's dangerous and foolish thinking. The whole podcast would implode upon itself. Then it would be like 2001 with the birth of the Star Child floating out of the Stargate towards the new sun. In this case, it would be Jamie and Richard ready to catch a little baby Chris into their arms as proud parents.
James, I'm not sure that's how it works. You should have paid more attention in biology class at school.
That's certainly an image to leave you with, isn't it? So yes, do pop over to our Facebook group and join in the fun and post away.
Right. I can't get that weird image out of my head now. Should we just go over to small baby Chris who we've just caught in our arms?
Yeah, I think I need to
go very special
wash my mouth out if that's all right.
Randomiser? Yeah, I think me too. So yes, it's the 100th randomiser.
Ah.
Congratulations, Chris.
Well done, Chris.
A week later than the pod because, well, the first randomiser was in pod 2.
That's right.
Well, I suppose really the first full podcast was in pod 2, so was pod 100 really our century? I don't think we'll ever know for sure.
Things again.
But for sure, this is the 100th randomiser. I can't wait. Let's hope it's something really special. Chris, it's over to you.
How you doing? You sure it'll work?
Oh, don't worry, Commander. I think we're on the right track so far. Oh, hello everyone, and welcome to the 100th instalment of the Randomiser. That's right, forget all that Pod 100 stuff from last week. This is going to be a proper anniversary special. See, for 1 week only, I've even replaced Marina with her Madame Tussauds waxwork. Anyway, we're here today on Moonbase Alpha for a very special experiment.
Otto, will you help us set up the experiment?
Naturally.
That's right, we are going to connect my brain directly to the randomizer in order to make the selection. Now, obviously this is absurdly dangerous, but thankfully we had a willing volunteer ready to test the procedure before we try it out on me.
Dr. Russell will fill you in on the medical background.
That's right, thank you, Commander.
He underwent an operation to implant a complex of fiber sensors in the cortex of his brain.
And then we connected his brain directly to the randomizer just a few moments ago. So, Eric, how are you doing? Eric? Hello?
Astronaut Eric Sparkman, deceased.
Damn it. When will they ever learn?
Well, that's no good. What went wrong, Helena?
I don't know. There was very little brain tissue left to examine. Most of it had melted.
Well, this is certainly a setback, but I still think we should push ahead. After all, I've sat through more torchy than is probably healthy, and it didn't melt my brain too much, tingling bird.
Medically, I was opposed to the experiment.
Well, then why'd you let it go ahead?
Your case converted me.
Oh, don't tell me. I am your favourite part of the Gerry Anderson podcast. I hear that all the time, you know.
Yours was the undeniable success story.
Oh, darling, you flatter me. Keep it up.
All set? All set.
Right, that's it. Plug me in, and here we go. Of course, the idea is to let my brain guide the machine into making a selection. Now, there's a lot of random stuff floating around my head.
I'm a teapot! I'm a teapot!
I think if we can sift past that and maybe find something good, oh yes, I think maybe there's something there.
It's an increase in brain activity. What's that coming up now?
A number. Yes, I'm thinking of a number.
What is it?
90.
Oh. Ooh.
Hold that.
Yes, I like the sound of that. It's got a nice beat to it, hasn't it?
It's beautiful.
Yes, it is. And I'm seeing some letters now as well. C. U. Oh no, those aren't letters, those are words. I think. Yes, that's it. We've done it.
Looks that way.
We've only landed on my favourite episode of one of my favourite Anderson shows. Yes, that's right, for the 100th randomiser, here comes Joe 90 with See You Down There. Well now, I would have to say the last 10 episodes of the randomiser, with the exception of the Cham Cham, bearing in mind the fact that I can't really remember yesterday at this point, never mind 10 weeks ago.
All I need is a little...
Most of the recent randomiser selections haven't set the world alight, let's say that. And
years. Look, Harris, I haven't all day.
We've had the worst Gerry Anderson episode of all time, and now we have...
But I expanded on you.
My favourite episode of...
Company. A
favourite series of mine.
Harris.
See You Down There. I have always loved this episode.
One day you'll realise that you just can't trample on people. You'll learn. You know the way out. Goodbye, Harris.
And what's so impressive about this episode is it demonstrates the fact that by this time, this is one of the last episodes of Joe 90 to be produced. The Century 21 had kind of realised that, you know, high-tech jets and explosions are all very nice, but we don't need them to tell an entertaining story.
Oh, it's you. They're just going into the ballroom. Make sure no one disturbs them. Orders from Mr. Clayton. Right.
With memorable characters.
No one will get past me.
So we're at the Clayton Enterprises building, this big conglomerate headed by Colonel White in his dark hair again. Joe has snuck past the doorman. And a rare attempt there to make the Robert Mitchum modelled guest puppet walk. It didn't quite come off right.
Sir! Don't shout, man. Try to remember you've left the army. We're going in, Molyneux. And bring my car to the front entrance in half an hour. Yes, Mr. Clayton.
And there's Joe reading an issue of TV21 with Captain Scarlet on the front, which is a lovely touch. He's in the boardroom.
Clayton?
Where these businessmen are having their meeting.
What are you doing in here, boy?
I didn't feel well, sir. I just came in here to sit down for a minute.
I see. You'd better wait in the anteroom.
Yes, sir.
Well, let's get down to business. Now, you'll see from the figures on page 3 that the present market price is 23 1/8. Within a week, I estimate this will have dropped to 11 4.
Then, when the shares fall to rock bottom, they step in and buy them up. There could be up to 30 different companies involved.
And again, this is a slight gamble on the part of... this is a Tony Barwick penned episode, by the way, as is made absolutely clear later on.
You're the expert, so I suppose you understand it all. But to a layman, it sounds like out-and-out fraud.
Legalised fraud.
Yeah, talking about fraud and shares and big business in a kid's puppet show.
Touch him.
You mean to tell me Clayton can get away with it?
Mac, he's done it before.
And as far as I can see, he'll do it again.
One of the companies he has on the hook this time is Leto Machine Tools.
Leto Tools? That's owned by a guy called Harris. He manufactures specialized components of national importance. Even WIN use him on special occasions.
That's right.
Components of national importance. Yeah, it is serious. It is very serious.
But if he's inside the law, how do we do that?
Well, I think I've got it. This is a unique situation, and we'll have to resort to unorthodox methods. But maybe the joke will be on Clayton. Here's how we do it.
Come in. Who are you?
Professor McLean, BSc, PhD, Fellow of the Royal Institute. I'm the new T-boy.
Now, I may go quiet for extended periods of this because as I said, I absolutely love this episode.
Instead.
Well, it was quite amusing. I waited till he'd finished his tea, and then I told him. Very casually, I said, "By the way, Mr. Clayton, the tea you have just drunk contained a drug, perfectly harmless, physically, but it will induce hallucinations until an antidote is administered."
Did he believe you?
Of course not. He was absolutely furious. I then said, unless he called off his next fraudulent takeover and paid back all the people he'd cheated in the past, the drug would be allowed to take effect.
What happened then, Dad?
He had me thrown out by the commissioner.
I told you.
It's such a simple idea, but it lends itself so well to little comedy moments like this. And especially...
Deception.
With a show that I feel has its tongue firmly in its cheek a lot of the time anyway.
Look at the time. Off you go, Joe. You've got to be up early tomorrow. That's when the fun will begin.
But it also demonstrates how far the Super Mario Nation show's sense of humour had developed from the days of Supercar, even up to Thunderbirds, really. We don't get those moments that I always found very, very annoying in these shows of ending an episode with everybody laughing and the music going wah wah wah. This is a bit more, I wouldn't say sophisticated, but it's far more subtle than that. Which is probably why I find this possibly one of the funniest Gerry Anderson episodes of all time, but it isn't conventionally funny. It's just... oh, I adore this episode because I adore this series. Anyway, we're now arriving at Clayton's nice house. Looks to be early morning. He's got a very nice place here. Big piano, lots of lovely chairs and furnitures. And you do, if you watch these shows long enough, you do start to recognise that sofa and that grandfather clock and those curtains from all the other sort of nice stately homes and drawing rooms and such that the Anderson shows offered. And here we are in... we're Ralph Clayton, as played by Colonel White's bedroom. He's having a nice little nap. What could possibly go wrong? Well, that could be a little boy playing a trumpet.
What's the meaning of this? Are you completely mad?
Yep.
I'd like to talk to you.
Clear off!
And that's what makes this episode work. Everybody is mad.
A little of the trumpet voluntary, Joe.
My pleasure.
Because I don't remember an Anderson episode where our heroes decide to annoy somebody into submission.
Round one to us, I think, Joe.
Which is what makes this so memorable and so exceptional to me. It's just so weird.
Good morning, Mr. Clayton.
Are you raving mad?
We came to see if you've changed your mind.
Wait a minute. Aren't you the boy who was in the boardroom? It's you playing the trumpet.
It sure is. You dig?
If anything like this happens again, I will have no hesitation in putting the whole matter in the hands of the police. And if you take my advice, you'll go and see a psychiatrist.
Crazy.
See you down there, Mr. Clayton.
Get off my property.
And in that moment, we get one of the...
See you down there.
What is clearly an inspiration, a major inspiration for this episode, is the prisoner, with the expression "see you down there," and they're even making the "be seeing you" hand gesture.
Police to cooperate.
What did you tell them, Mr. Weston?
The truth, Joe. WIN are investigating Clayton.
Which makes this a rather...
Their eye on him for some time.
It's rare to see an Anderson episode directly influenced by something from a non-Anderson series, but this episode is I've always felt very strongly is a combination of The Prisoner and A Christmas Carol.
And get in on the fun. See you down there.
And it also helps that the characters are having so much fun doing all this.
You want 5-foot gates fitted to your drive with electronic locks operated from the house.
Right. And I want it done today.
Yes, sir.
Molyneux here is also another lovely character.
Particular reason?
Don't ask questions, man. I don't care what it costs.
As we know, he used to be a soldier. He's so dedicated and loyal.
Weston, CNC, World Intelligence, London.
Mr. Weston, from World Intelligence? I don't understand.
I'm the new T-boy.
Can we get T-shirts with that on?
You too, Molyneux!
Can we get...
Down there, Clayton?
Oh, please, can we get some "See You Down There" or "I'm the New T-Boy" T-shirts? They would be just wonderful. Anyway, Joe is now being brained up once again. Who's he going to have on his mind this time? We had the trumpet player. Who will it be now? Anyway, we're back at Clayton's place. It's night time again. He's in his bedroom. What time is it? Ooh, it's either 4 o'clock or 20 past midnight, and I can't tell because the hands on the clock look to be the same length. And those new gates fitted to the front of the house, they don't stop a jet air car from just gently leaping over. Mac's now fiddling with the electrics.
Now, the doorbell. Let's see. I think if I just connect...
Puppet's tapping his chin thoughtfully with a screwdriver.
That should do it.
Ah, the chimes of Big Ben. Because we need more prisoner imagery in this.
Even better than I anticipated.
Okay, Mac. I'll go and see how strong his nerves are.
So now Joe is rapping at the window in his little jetpack. And I have to say, as much as I love the HD transfer, sometimes the miniature figures in the model sequences do not look very good. And this little figure of Joe is particularly naff.
Hello, Clayton. Interesting chimes you have there.
That car. How did you drive it past the gates?
Car? What car?
Clear off, you lunatic!
This must have been so much fun to perform as well, just for 1 week only. All your characters have to be completely mad. It's brilliant.
Who's that?
I realise this episode may not be to everybody's taste. I know this series is not to everybody's tastes.
Who is it?
But I have always loved this one. And I don't know if it's just because it's so atypical or because I just find it so funny. Not in, like, laugh riot comedy funny, but just sort of strange and surreal funny. windows are being blown open. Pulled open by Joe.
Who's there?
It's a boy on a jetpack.
See you down there, Mr. Clayton.
I also like as well that they chose the Colonel White puppet to play Clayton. Because he does have a sternness, but I think
all this happened.
The fact that he looks...
That's right.
And you say the boy then flew out the window?
Yes, the same one who played the trumpet. What do you look at me like that for?
Well, just how could he have flown?
It does also remind you of the sillier moments of Colonel White, where he was absolutely barking mad and yelling at people for...
The police, sir!
Treating his desk like a rest centre and various things.
Boy and his lunatic father.
Well, we'll leave you...
Because even though his hair is dark now rather than white, you do look at him and think, it's Colonel White, it's always Colonel White.
Sam Louver, River Police. Do a lot of work underwater, undercover, under stones, underpaid. Understand you're in trouble.
I don't believe it.
Can I get you a drink of water?
I'm in my happy place. I'm in my happy place with this episode.
Listen.
Oh, there it is again.
No, sir. Sir.
One thing I don't understand with this episode, though, is,
Why, I never felt better in my life. You're fired. Fired, do you hear?
How Molyneux didn't hear the trumpet playing then? They could easily have snuck in a quick line to say, yeah, we knew he was in the army, because Clayton said that earlier. It would have been so easy to sneak in a line where he said, you know, there was I can't hear much these days because a bomb or something went off near my ear and damaged my hearing. But it almost, for that one moment, makes it look like Molyneux is in on the plot. And there's nothing in the rest of the episode to suggest that he is. It's the four wind lads working alone. Anyway, they've brained Joe up again. Who's he going to be this time?
The brain pattern of the world's leading mimic.
Shall I try it, Dad?
Yes, Joe.
I think...
I think you've done a marvellous job, Sam.
Hey, that was great. You've got Mac's voice exactly, Joe.
And I don't know to what extent a child could mimic an adult's voice.
Know what day it is.
That's right.
Now we can really work on Clayton.
But again, it's puppets, so it doesn't matter. The voice is perfectly synced to the lip movements anyway.
Is that you, Stuart?
Is that you, Stuart?
That's it, Joe.
So it doesn't matter that this is absolute absurdity.
Oh, it's ringing.
Is that you, Stuart? Come over to my home immediately.
Joe hasn't got the phone
And listen, wear fancy dress.
up to his ear.
That's what I said, fancy dress. Don't argue, just do it. And tell Evans to do the same. Yes, it's a party. Stuart, if you two want to remain members of the board, you better get over here, fast.
Great, Joe. Just great.
I also love that a World Security Organization is dedicated to just wasting time like this now.
What are you two trying to do?
Well, you called me on the telephone.
I know.
So Evans is dressed as a cowboy and Stuart is dressed as a court jester.
Come on, who's behind all this?
I think we'd better leave.
Fancy dress. Trying to make me think I'm seeing things, eh? Hallucinations, eh? Who's that?
And as strange as it must seem for them to have to do this,
we phoned for a doctor.
They're still the ones who made the choice of costume.
Who's sick, eh? You're not saying I'm sick.
Take it easy, I think.
And here's a slightly different look for the Colonel White puppet. He suddenly looks very panic-stricken. The eyes are completely different to normal. I'm not sure
You?
if that's a...
I checked on you. R-C-N-C-W-I-N.
That's right.
Shane Weston is now here as a doctor, by the way.
I am. How long has he been?
Yeah, I would love to know what the origins of that scared Colonel White puppet head are.
In fact, get out. All of you.
If it's a modified smiling head or angry head from the Captain Scarlet days.
Say 6 a.m. tomorrow? See you down there.
Get out. Get out. Get out. Get out!
So Clayton has now lost Molyneux, Evans and Stuart. He's now very much alone.
If this works, Mac, it'll be a clincher.
But the Wing Gang still aren't done with him yet.
Sam. Shane Weston managed...
Again, there could be some, huge international spy disaster unfolding at this very moment, and the head of the World Intelligence Network is playing practical jokes.
Ready to start transmission in 30 seconds.
But who cares?
Ready this end, Professor. Ready, Joe?
Ready. This is
Ralph Clayton. This is...
So Shane and Joe are back at the cottage in a makeshift television studio. I noticed the TV camera they've got there has Win TV printed on the side of it. I've never noticed that before.
The river reaches through...
I've seen this episode so many times, I've never noticed that. Anyway,
and the wild...
Ralph Clayton is now at home trying to relax, watching TV. And here come Mac and Sam to ruin his evening.
One world may wander like a cloud o'er vales and hills in this blessed land. We interrupt this program for a special telecast. Tonight, we are privileged to have Ralph Clayton of Clayton Enterprises in the studio.
No.
Ralph Clayton. Good evening.
No.
So this is Joe pretending to be Clayton being beamed directly onto Clayton's TV.
Submission. And still stay inside the law.
It's such a clever idea. We don't need to spend too much time with it.
See you down there, Mr. Clayton.
But all of this has clearly had an impact on Clayton. He's having nightmares about it all now.
World intelligence. Undercover. Understones.
See you down there, Mr. Clayton.
I realise this may not come across on audio very well. I don't know to what extent people who've never seen this episode are following the plot of this.
World intelligence. Do a lot of work underwater, undercover, understones, underpaid. Understand you're in trouble.
Ralph Clayton.
But I do genuinely appreciate how well this one does a comedy episode with a slightly serious vein without going too much for the laughs. Anyway, Clayton now can't sleep. It's, what, 5:45 in the morning now?
Have you got the documents, Joe?
Yes, Dad. Everything's ready. Uncle Sam telephoned Clayton. He knows we're coming.
Oh, Clayton looks so...
It's open.
So small in his big house and so alone.
Good morning, Mr. Clayton.
All right. The antidote. How much do you want for it?
Not a penny. Just a signature. My son Joe has the documents in question. I presume you have a pen.
But this is too much. It says here...
It says you will pay back all the money you have made by your smart tricks.
I won't do it.
I think you ought to, Mr. Clayton.
Molyneux.
See you down there, Clayton.
Oh, dear.
Wait.
They're being so cruel to this guy, it's wonderful.
Knees for all the little men you've crushed.
Because in a way it's only what he's brought on himself through all his dodgy business dealings and
Fine.
All right.
utter lack of pity or sympathy for all the people whose businesses he's ruined over the years.
All your hallucinations.
Here comes the cure.
They look like jelly babies.
Yes, they do, don't they? That's it. Take one.
That's it. And that is, again, an odd foreshadowing of another British cult TV character who also liked jelly babies.
Healthy mind, healthy body.
There was no drug, and there was a logical explanation for everything that happened. You think about it, Clayton.
So Clayton has now vowed to pay back all his debts. He's got a bag of jelly babies, but he's also got a new outlook on life.
Molyneux?
Is anything wrong, Mr. Clayton?
No, Jim. It's just good to see you back.
Well, thank you, sir.
I think we might think about a rise for you, Jim.
Yay! Molyneux's getting a raise.
Thank you, sir.
Ah, Stuart. How are we this morning?
Fine, as yet.
I love that.
Have a jelly baby.
I love that, because even though Stuart is such a minor character in this episode, it's clear that he has been...
Yes, it took a young boy and a jelly baby.
He's been put through the ringer in this episode as well by watching his boss...
Work to do. Honest work.
...mentally deteriorating before his eyes. But that's not going to be a problem anymore. Clayton has been fixed of all his bad business ethics, and as we leave the City of London, we leave my favourite episode of Joe 90. And that is an episode that if you are on the fence about this series, I would urge you to give a look. I know for a fact that I have converted more than one person into a Joe 90 fan as a result of saying just watch this one episode. It is completely at odds with the rest of the series and what you would expect a Gerry Anderson show to be, but at the same time it is just hugely entertaining on its own merits, it is a kind. I suppose it does kind of point the way towards the humour that would begin to creep in with the Secret Service, which I would say probably took this kind of humour to extremes. Here, it is perfectly balanced between a lovely, simple little story with a nice moral core that has this hugely surreal element behind it that actually, as Max said, there was a perfectly logical explanation for everything that happened, and that was absolutely right. So please go and watch this one if you haven't seen it. Always one of my favourites. Love this episode. Love Joe 90. Happy 100 to the Randomiser.
Oh, what a 100th for you, Chris.
And what a 100th for you, Jamie.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's interesting though, because, right, so I've said it before and I'll say it again.
Yeah.
Just because I don't like Joe 90 doesn't mean that I'm saying nobody else can like it or even love it.
Yeah.
That's absolutely fine.
Oh, yeah.
That's not how fandom should work. Some areas of fandom may think that's how things should work, that the thing you love is the only thing and everything else is rubbish and everyone else should stop watching it. Yeah. But that's not what we think here at all. If you love the Thunderbirds live action movie from 2004, amazing.
Yes.
You should love that. And the same with Joe 90. But it's interesting because some of the things that Chris loves about that episode are the things that make me dislike it even more. Which is strange, isn't it? Because he's like, oh, this is a great Joe 90 episode. It's fantastic. It's a kid's show with a kid spy, and it's a mission about shares and fraud and big business and insider trading. And even saying it, I'm just like, this is not exciting. And yet, for Chris, that makes it even better. Also, when this really annoys me, right? Okay, sorry, I'm just gonna have a little micro rant.
Out. Jamie, do you want to lie back on the couch first, and let's just go through this?
I will need to lie down after this. Yeah. Okay, so Joe gets the brain patterns right of other people. Fair enough. I'll go with that conceit. Every Anderson show has some sort of, given like that, which may not make sense. Yeah. But Joe is, a 10-year-old boy. His voice hasn't broken yet.
Right.
He gets given the brain pattern of the world's greatest mimic and is suddenly able to mimic a male broken voice.
I see. Okay.
And all he needs to do that is clear his throat.
Right.
I mean, I love Tony Barwick and Tony Barwick's writing, and he was such a prolific writer, creator of great stories, but come on.
So you would have sent that one back, would you? And said, no.
Yeah, so I'm like, sorry, Tony, you've got to find a better way to do this. Yeah. I mean, even for me, if Joe had been, it turned out that the mimic wasn't really a mimic, but he had this amazing box of tricks, like a technical thing. It was a mechanical. And then Joe had a device which he could do it with. Yeah. That is then like, oh, I could have that device and pretend to be my teachers or whatever.
See?
But I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chris. Yeah, fine. If you love Joe 90 and you enjoyed that, then I'm very happy for you. But for me, I'm just feeling irritated.
Interesting, Joe, because as we listened to that randomizer, you turned to me and said, I'm not going to go on about it. You just went on about it.
I did. That was meant to be a much shorter summary.
Rant.
I'm really sorry.
Sorry.
But again, these things stir up passions in people, good and bad.
Yes.
And for me, sorry.
Fine.
Sorry, Joe. More of a mac and cheese than a mac and Sam.
Jamie, you're still going on about it.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, okay. So let's have one final email before we say our goodbyes. This one's from Ian Thompson, who says, "Hi, Jamie and Richard. I don't mind if you don't include this in the podcast." Oh. Well, that's...
anyway, that's the end of the...
No. He says, "I just wanted to say thank you to you both and congratulations for becoming centenarians." Word of the day, Richard. Yeah, podcasters, I know you're Pod 101 now, but I thought I would let the dust settle to send you my thanks for all your efforts from both of you and the brilliant Chris Dale. You have, in my opinion, the best podcast that I listen to. And thanks for a brilliant Pod 100. It was very entertaining, and Jamie, you must be so proud of your dad's legacy and the fact that he's touched so many and his large body of work is loved by so many people. So once again, thank you both for having made this a most enjoyable podcast. The bond between you both comes through every episode. Oh... Does it?
That's your acting, that's
what it is. He says he's looking forward to Pod 200. P.S. Richard, I hope you don't mind me ribbing you in my previous emails about your Space Precinct mentions. Oh, no. I don't know if you know, but I was in Space Precinct. I don't like to mention... Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I'd like to keep it quiet.
Can we talk about that afterwards? I've never heard that.
And finally, PPS, Jamie, I am a FAB Facts fan, so please keep it going. Ian Thompson.
Fine. Well, that's given me the impetus to get the Fab Facts back out next week and not rely on one of your old Fabs or Fibs,
Yeah,
Richard.
fair enough. So there you go. Yes, do keep those emails coming and we'll read a few out again next week. Send them into podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk or hashtag us on Twitter, Gerry Anderson Podcast. Tag him, I'm Jamie Anderson, me, Richard N. James, or join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Podsterons. So many ways to get in touch.
Amazing. Well, there's nothing else to say now because you rounded that up so well.
Oh,
so
okay, fair enough.
Shall we just go?
Bye then.
See you down there.
Stage 1 complete.
Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
Yeah, so I just got a text message from Nick Briggs.
Oh, yeah?
And it said, "Oh, the first dog scene in the kennel really terrified me when I first saw it."
What is he talking about?
Well, can you work it out?
The first scene in the dog kennel, is it Benji, the biggest dog in the world, or whatever it's called?
No.
Clifford. No, it's Clifford. You see what I did there? Benji Clifford. It's
Benji
Clifford, the
Clifford,
biggest...
nice.
Yeah. Okay,
No,
is it...
no, it's not
Seek and Destroy Space Precinct.
1980s. It's definitely not.
No.
1980s horror film.
What? Dog in
With
a
lots of animatronics, set in a very cold place, lots of snow.
Oh, it's not The Thing, is it?
Yes, it's The Thing.
No, I've never seen The Thing.
You've never seen The Thing?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you've got to watch The Thing.
Okay. Well,
it's fantastic.
I'll watch The Thing then.
Yeah, lovely animatronics and practical effects and stuff.
Really?
It's really something. And it's. I was saying to Nick and Benji, actually, it was one of 3 films that Dad and I would watch repeatedly over kind of Christmas, New Year period because they were always shown on the telly.
Oh, really?
The Thing, Arachnophobia, and Tremors.
Oh, God. Christmas viewing?
Yeah, isn't that a weird collection of things to watch? But we watched them. Arachnophobia, literally every Christmas for like 10, 12 years.
Now, I mean, this really does explain a lot, doesn't it? I can see now. Yeah, all those years in therapy.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I mean, I'm sure arachnophobia did make me arachnophobic.
Yeah, fine.
So, thanks, arachnophobia.
Yeah, and Joe 90 has obviously given you a morbid fear of having other people's brain patterns implanted.
Yeah, absolutely. And big rats, funnily enough. Right, on that note, I think it's probably time we left.
All right, have a good week.
Yes, enjoy yourself.
Bye.
And see you next week. See you down there.
You have been listening to the Gerry Anderson Podcast. Wasn't it fun?
You have been listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.